Hi, this is Steve Sirot.
Oh, hello, Steve Sirot. This is Jean Parnell.
Hi, how are you?
Fine, and I want you to know that you're on the air.
Oh, that's great. Nice to hear.
And so many times people call me Steve, and they think there's going to be, wait a minute, I'll hook you up, and then all of a sudden I have to tell them, you're on already. You're on.
Well, I'm up and ready to help people however I can.
Well,
I do that every morning, so that's great.
Well, one of the things that what is the organization called? The College Benefit Research
Group. It's called the College Benefits Research Group, and it's a company that I founded with my partners back in 2008, and we help guide students and families through this incredibly growing, more everyday complex world of finding the right college and figuring out how to pay for it.
Well, Stephen, I just want to say this before you begin. I just think school has become, just education in America has become a big ripoff. I mean, I find that somebody must have said, ooh, you know what? Why should we give them education for free? Let's let them pay, and pay heavily, because people now, the debt that children and young people have to get out of school with, it's appalling.
And it's so competitive out there, and that feeds so much of this, because people have the impression that if they don't go to a quote unquote top school, that they're just not going to have great opportunities when they come out, and that landscape is changing, and there's so many reasons why, but. Look, I don't need to tell everyone that Harvard is Harvard, but it's so important to go and be a strong student at whatever school you go to. And so many studies now are showing that if you go to a quality school, I mean, even the city and the SUNY schools, those are some phenomenal schools with outstanding professors. And guess what? They're using the same books that they are at the other schools. So yes. It's so much about what you put into this.
Well, I have to agree with you 100%. And I must say to you that I came from an Asian era where everybody didn't have to literally, and I will go back on the other, go to an academia. They had vocational high schools, which were very, very informative, taught people how to do air conditioning, how to be plumbers, how to do those things. And they went to high school for 4 years, and when it was over, they got a job.
Absolutely.
And it was done. So then all the way somebody said, oh, my goodness, you can't get it unless you go to college. All right, college, there's nothing wrong with that. I've been there. You've been there. All of us have been there. But it has gotten outrageous. When I went to college, my father worked 2 jobs. He worked at the transit in the evenings. He did offices. He cleaned offices. And he put me through Howard University. And I graduated without debt, without a nickel. And now that's a joke. So
absolutely.
Somebody told me that, Stephen, you have thought of a way, or you have a plan, or you have a way that we can get around that, or be able to deal with it. So I'm going to let you take over from now on.
Oh, absolutely. And please feel free to ask me questions and anything that I talk about. I mean, we find that this process is very personal and unique for each student and family. So we work with families individually, guiding the best path for what is most important to all of them. One of the fun parts of our job is showing how important it is for the students and the parents to have a voice that they could respect one another, because although it's key that the student, we call it student ownership, the student has to want to go ahead and take advantage of their opportunities, okay? They have to put in a full faith effort, and they have to try to think about not only just, what might be fun to do, but what they're skilled at, what their interests really are,
Yes.
And then start to relate that to what they could study and what they could do out there in the career force. But the parents, look, they've been raising that kid before they remember, and they have amazing insight into what makes them tick, what makes them motivated, and ultimately a lot of times what makes them happy. And I'm not going to argue that parents are always right, but there should be respect to let everyone have a voice in this process so that you're not making mistakes and getting in over your head or going into schools that you're not going to be happy. I mean, one of the things that people are most amazed, we do free workshops in our community to try to educate students and families, and one of the biggest eye-openers that we bring is the 4-year graduation rate. People just assume that it's going to be just like high school, and how many students get through high school in 4 years. The overwhelming majority, well, it's definitely not that way once they get to college. The national average for public schools is 33% 4-year graduation rate, and that's for students going for full-time for a 4-year degree. Private schools, they're not that much better at just over 50%, and that's certainly not something that people are aware of going in, and it's a real shock, So
I know. I'll tell you something. I think that what you're, and I hope you're going to run us through it, because I think
Sure.
when people are getting ready to go to college, that there's a period of time when they have to start thinking about it. I know I have a grandson, and the other day, we were somewhere, and I was talking to him, and he was swimming, and I was sitting by the pool, and we were on a vacation, and I said to him, you're going to have to start thinking of something that you really like, something
Right.
that you can do exceptionally well. I said, because,
Great.
the better you do, then maybe you get a scholarship, We have some friends of mine who live in my complex, whose son did chess, and he went all the way through Duke doing with chess.
Absolutely.
You got a scholarship. So, I mean, that's one way. And, of course, you have other ways maybe that are probably more attainable. But that is a way to go,
Gene, I love it. I love it. And first, I hope you had a great vacation, and hopefully it wasn't in Florida during the hurricanes. Man, they've gotten hit hard. But you bring up a great point. I mean, we want to start to talk to students when they're in high school and early on. Too often they're starting to feel the pressure of making these big decisions halfway through junior year. Well, we don't expect 16 and 17-year-olds, most of them, to know what they want to do for the rest of their lives at that point, right? I'm 48. I'm still figuring it out. So, that's a little bit hard to ask for. But we want them to be what's called college aware when they hit high school. And by the time they get to the end of high school, we want them to be college ready. And that means they should start planning about thinking what they like, what interests them, and start to get involved in ways that not only let you explore your strengths and your interests, but start to build a history and a portfolio or a resume, so to speak, so that when you apply to colleges, they get to see who you really are.
Yes.
Okay? And so, like you brought up with chess, if they have a chess team, they want good chess players. My partner, Janet Lawrence, she's a certified educational planner, and she's phenomenal and amazing. She works with our kids every day. And how many times she's told me, just an example, if a college band needs a tuba player and their tuba player is graduating this year, they're on the hunt.
Yes,
and that could make a big difference of getting in and even potentially getting money. So I think that students should allow themselves to be themselves, create their strengths, and instead of focusing on one college, you start to look for colleges that fit you.
Yes. Yes.
And that is another great part about it. There are so many wonderful colleges. As long as students and families have an open mind going into the college choice process, then more times than not, they're going to be amazed at the choices that they have at the end of the process. So certainly that's one of those things. The other thing is they got to put in the effort academically. That's still the driver. Now, not every student is an amazing test taker, and standardized tests, while they do show something, when schools rely on them too heavily for their admittance decisions, many times they get students that may test really well, but don't work really hard. And that was causing a problem that colleges started to pick up on. So they've been more acutely aware of looking at the student holistically. And that means that if their GPA and their rigor of their courses are strong, but they don't test well, there's still wonderful opportunities for those students, which is hopeful. In fact, what we try to see is that their academic record really, as close as we can, the best outcome would be that their standardized test scores align with that.
Well, you know,
okay.
I remember when I went to college, I was an exception to the rule, and then I went to the High School of Performing Arts, and when I got out of there, Juilliard and Bennett and those kinds of schools were eager to take us,
right,
because we were already prepared. But there was so many, I still chose Howard University over them. But I just want to say to you is that one of the things that I found that once I got to Howard, I was able to use my dance and my skills for part-time work, for teaching in the Y, little kids on Saturday morning, various things that also gave me a little bit of extra money to buy that soda or whatever treat that I wanted for myself.
Sure.
Yeah. And
it's absolutely. I mean, we want to start with a game plan for the family that also focuses on the dollars and the financial plan. We want to know what our budget is and not let the process become an emotional process where that's what drives your choices, but you want to be realistic, reasoned, and not get in over your head. One of the big reasons for the dramatic rise in the cost of college is colleges creating tuition revenue that could be resourced to try to get the students that they really want. And so not all schools do the same, so it's important that you look at how schools give money, whether it's need-based or merit-based or both, and some don't give either. So you start with the family budget. It should be communicated with the students so that we know what we're getting into. You shouldn't just focus on cheaper schools because some of the most expensive schools give the most aid. I have the privilege. My son is in college. He's at Cornell, and that's over $70,000 a year now.
That's crazy.
It's crazy.
That's crazy.
But it's crazy. But most students don't end up paying it because although they don't give any merit money, they are phenomenal with need-based aid. So what they've been able to achieve is giving access to students that come from lower class or even middle class families in that range, making it more financially attainable. So the difference is though not all schools have Ivy League endowments, and so a lot of times they use their money and their tuition revenue to try to get other students to come. So when you start to relate both the family budget to how the colleges give money, it opens up possibilities that are still affordable.
Well, I'm sure there are certain things that one can do to approach this. And one of the things that's not your job, but Stephen Sirot. But I just find that, I mean, says they say when you're in Rome, you got to play. You got to do as the Romans do.
Right.
But I I mean, I know that the loan debt is up now to an outrageous. People, everybody I know owes college debt. Everybody I
Yeah,
know.
absolutely.
I mean,
It's almost $1.5 trillion in loan debt, and the interest on that debt is high, and it's burdening their future and their choices once they come out, because parents are co-signing for a significant portion of it, and people that were expecting to be able to retire at a reasonable age, or at least be able to retire at a reasonable age, are finding that they can't even consider retiring or scaling back, or they're burdened by this massive debt. One of the things that we discussed with our child was our budget. I have 3 children,
yes,
and I love them all.
yes,
In fact, I love them all the same.
yes.
The difference is if you ask me on any given day, I definitely have a favorite. Okay, but if I averaged out all of my days, I love them all the same.
Sure, yeah.
And my wife and I, we worked on what our budget is, what we believe is realistically affordable for us to help them contribute to college, and we've communicated that with them. I have twin girls; they're juniors in high school now,
Okay.
and Cornell didn't fit that bill, so he's got skin in the game. He's coming out with debt now. I wouldn't be comfortable with him taking out more debt than that I think is realistically he could handle. So he'll owe about $500 a month when he's done, and I believe that that's realistic. And he couldn't have convinced us to say, well, we could take out more because it's worth it. Because to come out with $100,000 or $120,000 of debt, that's like a mortgage payment on a house.
It is.
I couldn't do that. So how could I expect a brand new graduating student to be able to do that? So you've got to be realistic in your budget. And one of the ways that we handled it was my son went to a school where he got a full ride for his first year, and then he transferred to Cornell because that money that he saved the first year made it possible within our budget. So you do what you have to do, and there's a lot of ways. I mean, we talk to students about like what you did, which is using your talents to help you afford what you needed, or maybe to have a little fun at school. We talk about being maybe a residence assistant to try to get some free housing, things like that. Even students that are out of school that maybe didn't qualify for merit money going in, sometimes schools have scholarships that open up for students that shine once they're there.
Yes.
And people very rarely even look at that. But their goal for giving the merit money is to, A, get students to choose their school, and although to a much smaller extent, but still sometimes there, is they want to keep students from leaving. And so that's why some of those scholarships may even open up once the student is there. And people should be aware of, all of that to try to make this work. Because think about how it was for you coming out of college. You were able to come out with no debt.
Yes.
Imagine if you had to come out and pay $1,000 a month. What kind of choices would you have to make? Could you take a job you loved that maybe had great future potential but didn't pay you a lot to start? Where would you have to live? It just affects their choices and their life so much afterwards. And those 4 years go so quickly. You've got to have an eye on what's going to happen once you come out.
And again, it all goes back to, and I ask you this because it's not I didn't intend to, but who decided to do this to our young people? What made this? What made this possible? Because I'm going to say this to you. I know now. I live here in Manhattan, and
Right.
private schools now, as opposed to public schools, start for kindergarten $42,000. Sometimes
Oh,
some of them are $50,000, and I I don't understand what the system is doing here. For some odd reason, it's pre-dedicating or pre-making a class system. Because
sure.
if people come out, as you said, owing, which is normal now, at least $100,000 or $50,000.
Right.
I mean, and they don't even have a job, and they don't even have an apartment to live in.
Right.
What are you saying to young people? What are you saying to society? I mean, and we know.
I mean, these are such complex questions. I mean,
know.
the simple answer is, as long as you have people that are willing to pay, then they can get away with it. And you know, it's complex in that if people weren't paying the money,
Yes.
they couldn't get away with it,
No, they couldn't.
right? But they have to compete as well.
Yes.
And so it drives what they do, and the ability for people to go and borrow more than they really could and should be able to afford
Yes.
has also fueled it.
Yes.
And it came out of wonderful intentions to say, let's help people afford college because it's so important, and yet for so long, all you really had to do was sign your name and they'd give you whatever you needed for college.
Yeah.
Well, you've got to be able to pay that back. So if someone gives you a loan that is going to burden you tremendously and you can't pay back, are they really doing you a favor and charging you very, very high interest
Yes.
at the same time?
They are
So
then-
there's
But then
look.
the alternative, and I just want to include this.
Sure.
But the alternative is not to go to school, not to be
Right.
educated.
Right.
So
Oh.
what is the answer to that?
I think part of it is, at least from my perspective, that if you have an open mind and you work within your situation, there's a way to do it. Okay, and I'll give you a quick story, and hopefully this gives you how people look at things. When my son was in high school, he was a very, very strong student, and he worked hard. I'm extremely proud of him. He was the class president. He cares tremendously about what he does and people and trying to make this world a better place. And I couldn't be prouder. But we were having a college night at his high school, and we all said, my wife and I said, yeah, let's definitely go. My son said, I don't want to go. Why do we need to go? No one will be there. I said, Jay, we're going. So first, as we're going in, the auditorium was absolutely packed, okay? It was standing room only. So the theory that parents and students weren't going to go for my son was definitely not right. He just said, but Dad, you're in the business. Don't embarrass me. I said, okay, I'll do my best.
Yeah.
So the panel was admissions representatives or deans from several universities, and we're talking from Muhlenberg to Bloomsburg to Monmouth. I mean, they had, I think it was 7 or 8 different universities that were there and colleges, and they had also the dean from Morris County Community College, which is really a wonderful community college we have here in New Jersey. And what the format was, for the first 5 minutes, each one of them had 5 minutes to talk about anything they wanted, and then it was Q&A from the crowd, right? So they all went through their little spiel, and then as the Q&A started to come, all the schools were being asked questions. Mostly the higher ranked or the brand name schools were being asked most of the questions, but the one person that wasn't getting any questions was the dean from Morris County Community College, and it was frustrating me.
Yeah.
So I raised my hand, and as I raised my hand, I saw my son get nervous, right? But I didn't care. It was important. And so when they called on me, I said, I have a question for the gentleman from Morris County Community College. And I said, I remember reading somewhere that if you're in the top 15% of your class in your high school, that you're eligible for this program, that your tuition is free at community college. Now, I've written this in magazines. I've been interviewed on TV and talked about it. I didn't say what it was. I wanted him. I was throwing the bait, and man, he took it. He said, "Oh, absolutely. It's called the NJ Stars program, and it's wonderful." And he started talking about it, and he was excited that finally somebody asked him about it. And there was people that that had never heard of it, right? So if you had a family, and the reason I brought it up was that if you had a family with a strong student who's worked really hard, and they were running on hard times, or God forbid they lost their job, and they were worried about how are we going to pay for college, this is a wonderful program where you could go to a community college for 2 years, get your associate's degree, and have the tuition completely funded. And if you're in the top 15% of your, or I think it's above a 3.5 or top 15%, you could then be eligible to transfer to any of the state schools and get half tuition subsidized.
Well,
okay, and so you could come out with a degree from Rutgers or TCNJ for under $30,000, all in.
Our time is going to run out, and one of the things that I wanted to know is if somebody wanted to get in touch with you, what would they do?
A couple of great things they could do. First, our website, where they could see a lot of our radio and TV and clients that we've worked with that talk about what they did. That's at our website, which is cbrg.info. That's cbrg.info. And they could also go on there. We do workshops in and around the area. They're free. Everyone that comes loves them. They learn a tremendous amount, and anyone's certainly welcome to come to any of those workshops that are listed there. All they have to do is just let us know they're coming. We'll reserve them a seat, and we would encourage the parents to bring their students because we talk directly to the students too. And one of the aces in the hole we have is that we say things that parents say all the time, but kids listen to us differently, only because we're not the parents. So I would say bring your kids as well.
That's so smart. I mean, what you're doing is certainly a gift to all of us, because education now has really become very capitalized, and it's become very commercial. And for some odd reason, I think it's moved into another realm of education. So
right.
I know whatever you're saying here is so needed. It just so happens that you're talking to me today, and guess where I'm sitting? It's City College.
And what a great deal! That's one of the golden jewels where you could still get a very strong quality education that's affordable.
Well, I want to thank you, Steve. And if you get any other ideas or have anything else you'd like to share with us, we would love it. We would love it, because this is fabulous. And what happens is that I don't think there's a soul out here who doesn't need this. Everyone, if they don't have they have grandchildren, they have nieces and nephews, they have family members who are entering into the school. And I want somebody to know this. Once you owe them money, when you go looking for a job, they tell the people who calling up that you want to employ that you owe them money.
Absolutely.
It's a terrible thing.
And those loans are sticky. You take out those federal loans, you don't bankrupt out of them. They stick around. They'll get their money.
Somebody told me that if you die, your mother got to pay it, I mean, it's just, I don't know, but somebody got to go investigate them.
Oh yeah, they're there, they're making money. So, I think just it's a privilege for us to do what we do, and the reason we love to talk and teach people is because we gotta keep the conversation going to try to change the landscape, because people are getting into situations that don't benefit them. They don't get out what they expected, and so much of that is because they're following the crowd instead of really examining what their best options are and making the most of them.
Well, I love what you say, when you say you can never start too early. And I think that, that's one of the biggest clues I got out of it. And thank you so much, Steve. I
What
appreciate
an honor it is to talk to you, and you're an amazing person, so thank you so much for having me.
it. Same to you. Bye-bye.
All right. Very best.